Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. You know, when a company posts these massive, record-breaking profits, the real story isn't always in the flashy charts they show you. It's actually hidden right there in the fine print. Enter the Independent Auditor's Report. This is essentially the ultimate financial health inspection for a company. And today, we're going to decode exactly how to read these reports so you can learn how to separate corporate spin from financial reality.
So how do we actually know a company is telling the financial truth? I mean, a single misstated number or a cleverly hidden liability can literally change the fate of an entire organization. The stakes are huge. To actually trust a company's claims, everyday investors like you and me have to rely on an impartial expert to verify the math. Let's look at exactly how that verdict is delivered.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, decoding the auditor's report. Second, the anatomy of a clean audit. Third, the emphasis of matter. And finally, red flags, modified opinions.
Section 1. Decoding the auditor's report.
At its core, the auditor's job is to assess whether a company's financial statements follow acceptable frameworks like IFRS or GAAP. But here is the absolutely crucial division of responsibility that you need to remember. Management prepares the statements, they make the estimates, and they apply the judgments. The auditor does not make those statements. Actually, think of it like this. Management is taking a test, and the auditor is just the neutral truth teller grading it. They examine the evidence to express an opinion on whether management's work is actually fair.
Section 2. Anatomy of a clean audit.
So what happens when everything goes right? A clean audit report, which is also known as an unqualified report, is highly structured. It always contains these 8 basic elements, laid out in exactly this order. It starts with a title, and it'll explicitly use terms like independent auditor just to prove it wasn't written by some company insider. Then it moves through the addressee, the introductory and scope paragraphs that detail what was audited and how, the critical opinion paragraph, and it wraps up with the auditor's signature, address, and the date of completion. Now you might be wondering, why this strict, rigid uniformity? Well, it's because it helps readers instantly spot unusual circumstances. If a report deviates from this standard 8-part structure, your detective senses should absolutely start tingling.
So, the crucial point is right here in the opinion paragraph. When you're reading an auditor's report, these are the magic words you are looking for: that the financial statements give a true and fair view or present fairly in all material respects. Functionally, these phrases mean the exact same thing. They are the ultimate green light for investors. It's the auditor confirming that they planned and performed their work, and they have reasonable assurance that the financials are free of material misstatement. Simply put, it means you can trust the numbers.
Section 3. The emphasis of matter. Now, what if the math is technically correct, but there's a narrative plot twist? That is where the emphasis of matter comes in. This paragraph is essentially a giant proceed with caution sign. It doesn't ruin the auditor's clean opinion, the financials are still mathematically true and fair, but it points the reader to a very specific critical note that they absolutely need to know about. For example, imagine a company is the defendant in a massive bet-the-company lawsuit for patent infringement, and they're facing huge punitive damages. The outcome is totally up in the air. The auditor will add an emphasis of matter to basically say, hey, we aren't failing this audit, the math is fine, but before you invest a single dime, you really need to go read Note X about this lawsuit.
Section 4. Red flags, modified opinions.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the bad news. An auditor simply cannot give a clean opinion if one of two things happens. And this brilliantly illustrates the 2 main roadblocks in auditing. First, a limitation of scope. This means our financial detective was blocked from seeing the evidence. Like, maybe they were hired too late to actually observe the physical counting of the warehouse inventory. They literally just can't verify that the stock exists. The second reason is a disagreement with management. In this case, the auditor sees all the evidence, but flat out disagrees with management's math. Maybe they used a totally unacceptable accounting policy, or they're hiding important disclosures.
Depending on just how severe that limitation or disagreement is, the auditor issues one of 3 modified opinions. The first, and least severe, is a qualified opinion. To translate the regulatory jargon for a second, a qualified opinion simply means everything is fine except for this one specific issue. For instance, let's say the auditor disagrees because management didn't apply a standard depreciation calculation on a building. It's a material error, yes, but it's isolated. It doesn't mean the entire financial report is garbage. It just means you, as the investor, need to mentally adjust for that one specific, qualified error.
Let's move to and see how this builds when things get much worse.
enter the disclaimer of opinion. Now, this happens strictly under a limitation of scope, but it's when that limitation is absolutely massive, what the rules call material and pervasive. If a company blocks the auditor from observing all their physical inventories and refuses to let them confirm accounts receivable, well, the detective has no choice. They are so severely restricted from finding evidence that they simply have to throw their hands up, walk away, and say, "We do not express an opinion on these financial statements."
And finally, we reach the absolute worst news possible for a company: the adverse opinion. This happens when the auditor has a disagreement with management that is so material and so pervasive that it just poisons the entire well. A simple except for qualification isn't going to cut it anymore. An adverse opinion means the company is failing the health inspection entirely. The auditor is definitively going on the record to state that the financial statements do not give a true and fair view. They are, quite frankly, misleading. Now, what's really interesting about this is how cleanly it all maps out. This is a highly useful cheat sheet to help you categorize these financial red flags. If a problem is material but isolated, you get a qualified except for opinion, and that's true whether it's a scope limit or a disagreement. But if the problem is pervasive, meaning it infects the whole shebang, a scope limit forces a disclaimer where the auditor just walks away. Meanwhile, a pervasive disagreement forces an adverse opinion, where the auditor calls the statements outright misleading.
Well, look at that. You are now officially equipped with the structural knowledge to analyze financial statements like a true detective. You know the exact 8-part layout to expect. You know the magic phrases that signal a clean bill of health. You know the proceed with caution signs of an emphasis of matter. And you definitely know the catastrophic red flags of modified opinions. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Next time you are looking at a company's glossy annual report, or you're thinking about investing your hard-earned money, will you just look at the bottom line? Or will you read between the lines of the auditor's verdict? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, stay curious.